Single dad struggled to eat at his sister's wedding until she said, "Pretend you're with me. Before we start, I love seeing this community grow. Feel free to introduce yourself below." The crystal chandeliers of the Riverside Manor cast dancing shadows across the reception hall as Marcus Reynolds sat rigidly at table 12, his left hand trembling slightly as he attempted to navigate a piece of chicken with his fork. His right sleeve, carefully pinned back, served as a constant reminder of the construction accident that had shattered his life 8 months ago. Beside him, his 6-year-old daughter Emma sat quietly, her small hands folded in her lap, watching her father's struggle with eyes far too mature for her age. "Daddy, I can help you," Emma whispered, her voice barely audible above the cheerful wedding music. "No, sweetheart, Daddy can do this," Marcus replied, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. But the chicken slipped from his fork for the 3rd time, and he felt the familiar burn of embarrassment creeping up his neck as he noticed a few guests at neighboring tables glancing his way. This was supposed to be a happy day. His younger sister Rachel was marrying the love of her life, and Marcus had promised himself he wouldn't let his disability cast a shadow over her celebration. Yet here he was, unable to perform the simple act of eating without drawing unwanted attention. Emma reached for her juice box, her pink flower girl dress rustling with the movement. "Aunt Rachel looked like a princess, didn't she, Daddy?" "She sure did, baby girl," Marcus agreed, grateful for the distraction. His sister had been radiant walking down the aisle, and for a few moments during the ceremony he'd forgotten about his own struggles and simply felt joy for her happiness. The reception was in full swing now. The DJ had just announced the father-daughter dance, and Marcus felt his chest tighten as he watched Emma's face light up, then quickly dim as she remembered. They wouldn't be dancing tonight. His balance wasn't reliable enough yet, and the thought of stumbling in front of 200 guests was more than he could bear. "It's okay, Daddy," Emma said softly, reading his thoughts as she often did. "We can dance at home." Marcus blinked back tears. His daughter had become his caretaker in ways a 6-year-old never should be. Since the accident, since losing his job, since his ex-wife Brittany had walked away saying she couldn't handle this version of him, Emma had been his reason to keep fighting. He attempted the chicken again, managing to get a small piece to his mouth. Small victories, his physical therapist Dr. Chen always said. But tonight, in his rented suit with the empty sleeve, watching couples twirl on the dance floor while his daughter sat beside him in patient silence, the victory felt hollow. "Mr. Reynolds?" The voice was unexpected, feminine and confident. Marcus looked up to find a striking woman in an elegant navy dress standing beside their table. She appeared to be in her late 20s, with dark hair pulled into a sophisticated updo and eyes that held an intensity that made him instinctively straighten his posture. "I'm sorry, do I know you?" Marcus asked, confused. He'd been introduced to so many of Rachel's friends and colleagues today that faces had begun to blur together. The woman smiled, but there was something calculated about it. "Not yet. My name is Victoria Ashford." She glanced around the room quickly, then leaned closer, her voice dropping to an urgent whisper. "I need you to do me a favor, and I promise I'll make it worth your while. Pretend that you're with me." Marcus blinked in confusion. "I'm sorry, what?" "There's a man across the room who won't take no for an answer," Victoria continued smoothly, though her eyes betrayed a hint of desperation. "If he thinks I'm here with someone, he'll leave me alone. Just play along for a few minutes, please." Before Marcus could respond, Victoria had slid into the empty chair beside him, her hand gently touching his left arm. "I noticed you were having trouble with your meal," she said, her voice now pitched to carry to nearby tables. "Would you let me help you? I insist." Emma's eyes widened as she watched this elegant stranger pick up her father's fork with practiced ease. Victoria cut a piece of chicken into manageable portions, then held a bite toward Marcus with such natural grace that it didn't feel degrading at all. Stunned and uncertain, Marcus opened his mouth and accepted the food. Victoria's smile became genuine as she continued, making conversation that seemed effortless. "Your daughter is beautiful. She must have been the prettiest flower girl in the wedding." Emma beamed. "Thank you. Are you Daddy's friend?" "I hope to be," Victoria said, and something in her tone made Marcus's skin prickle with awareness. This wasn't just about escaping an unwanted admirer. There was something else happening here, something he couldn't quite identify. As Victoria continued to help him eat, Marcus found himself studying her profile. She wore wealth like a second skin. Her jewelry was understated, but clearly expensive. Her posture spoke of private schools and country clubs, and there was a confidence in her movements that came from a lifetime of privilege. What could a woman like this possibly want from a broken-down construction worker? "There," Victoria said softly, setting down the fork after the plate was clean. "All done." She turned to Emma with a warm smile. "You know what? I think the dessert table has chocolate cake. Would you like to come with me to get some?" Emma looked to her father for permission, and Marcus found himself nodding, though every instinct told him something wasn't right about this situation. As Victoria stood and offered her hand to Emma, he noticed the way she looked at his daughter, not with the polite interest of a stranger, but with an intensity that made his protective instincts flare. "We'll be right back," Victoria assured him, and then she and Emma were weaving through the crowd toward the elaborate dessert display. Marcus sat alone at the table, his mind racing. He scanned the room, trying to identify which man might have been bothering Victoria, but he saw no one paying particular attention to their table. Something about her story didn't add up. His sister Rachel appeared at his elbow, slightly breathless from dancing. "Mark! I saw you talking to Victoria Ashford. How do you know her?" "I don't," Marcus admitted. "She just came over and asked me to pretend we were together, said some guy was bothering her." Rachel's expression grew puzzled. "Victoria Ashford doesn't need anyone's help dealing with unwanted attention. She's the CEO of Ashford Technologies. Her family owns half the commercial real estate in the state. If someone was bothering her, security would have that person removed in seconds." She paused, studying her brother's face. "Did she say anything else?" Before Marcus could answer, Victoria returned with Emma, who was carrying 2 plates of chocolate cake. The little girl was chattering excitedly about something Victoria had told her, and Marcus noticed how the elegant woman listened with genuine attention, occasionally laughing at Emma's enthusiastic descriptions. "Thank you for indulging my request earlier," Victoria said to Marcus as Emma settled back into her seat with her cake. "I know it was unusual." She reached into her small clutch and pulled out a business card, placing it on the table in front of him. "I'd like to speak with you privately, Mr. Reynolds. Tomorrow, if possible. There's something important we need to discuss." Marcus picked up the card. "Victoria Ashford, Chief Executive Officer, Ashford Technologies." Her office address was in the most expensive business district downtown. "What could you possibly need to discuss with me?" Marcus asked, his voice edged with suspicion. Victoria's eyes moved from him to Emma, who was happily eating her cake, then back to Marcus. When she spoke, her voice was low and intense. "I'll explain everything tomorrow. Please come. 2 o'clock. It concerns Emma." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. "What about Emma? What do you know about my daughter?" But Victoria was already stepping back, a sad smile on her face. "Tomorrow, Mr. Reynolds. I promise. Everything will make sense." She looked at Emma one more time, and Marcus could have sworn he saw tears glittering in her eyes before she turned and disappeared into the crowd. Rachel gripped Marcus's shoulder. "What just happened? What did she say?" Marcus stared at the business card in his hand, then at his daughter, who was oblivious to the tension, focused entirely on her dessert. "I don't know," he said slowly, "but I'm damn sure going to find out." The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Marcus went through the motions of celebration, hugging Rachel and her new husband, making small talk with relatives, but his mind kept returning to Victoria Ashford's final words. "It concerns Emma." How could a wealthy CEO he'd never met before have anything to do with his 6-year-old daughter? As the reception wound down and Marcus helped Emma into her coat, his daughter yawned and leaned against him. I liked that lady, Daddy. She was nice. Yeah, baby, Marcus murmured, buckling her into her car seat. She was something, all right. Driving home through the dark streets, Marcus caught glimpses of Emma in the rearview mirror, already half asleep. Whatever Victoria Ashford wanted to tell him, whatever she knew about his daughter, it had brought her to tears. And that terrified him more than anything had since the day he'd lost his arm. Because in his experience, people with power and money didn't seek out broken single fathers unless they wanted something. And whatever Victoria Ashford wanted, it was important enough that she'd tracked him down at his sister's wedding. Tomorrow at 2 o'clock, he'd get his answers. But tonight, watching his daughter sleep peacefully in the back seat, Marcus Reynolds couldn't shake the feeling that his life was about to change in ways he couldn't begin to imagine. The business card felt like it was burning a hole in his pocket as he carried Emma up to their small apartment and tucked her into bed. She stirred slightly when he kissed her forehead, murmuring something about chocolate cake and pretty dresses. "Sweet dreams, baby girl," Marcus whispered, but sleep would be a long time coming for him. He sat in the darkness of their tiny living room, Victoria's card on the coffee table before him, and waited for morning to come. Morning arrived too slowly and too quickly at the same time. Marcus had managed perhaps 3 hours of fitful sleep before Emma's cheerful voice woke him at 6:30, asking for pancakes. Going through their Sunday morning routine, mixing batter one-handed while Emma set the table, watching cartoons together on their worn couch, helping her brush her teeth, felt surreal knowing that in less than 8 hours he'd be sitting across from Victoria Ashford, learning whatever truth had brought tears to her eyes. His mother arrived at noon to watch Emma, and Marcus could see the concern in her weathered face as she studied him. "You look terrible, Marcus. Didn't sleep? Just had a lot on my mind, Ma." He kissed Emma goodbye, ignoring her protests about wanting to come with him to see the pretty lady's office. It's just a boring business meeting, sweetheart. Grandma's going to take you to the park, remember?" The drive downtown took 40 minutes in Sunday traffic. Marcus had worn his only interview suit, the same one from the wedding, with the right sleeve professionally altered now. He'd been to this part of the city exactly twice before. Once for a job that didn't pan out, once to see a lawyer who'd explained that suing his former employer would be expensive and unlikely to succeed. The buildings here seemed to scrape the sky, monuments to wealth and power that made his beat-up Toyota feel like an insult to the gleaming parking garage. Ashford Technologies occupied floors 15 through 22 of the Winchester building. The lobby reception area alone was larger than Marcus's entire apartment, all marble and glass and abstract art that probably cost more than he'd earned in his entire life. "Marcus Reynolds for Victoria Ashford," he told the receptionist, a polished young woman who looked like she'd stepped out of a fashion magazine. She made a call, spoke quietly, then smiled. "Miss Ashford is expecting you. Take the private elevator on the right to the 20th floor. Someone will meet you there." The elevator was the kind that made your stomach drop, all glass walls offering a dizzying view of the city falling away beneath you. When the doors opened on 20, a middle-aged woman in a professional pantsuit was waiting. "Mr. Reynolds, I'm Catherine, Miss Ashford's executive assistant. Please follow me." They walked down a hallway lined with photographs of construction projects, shopping centers, office complexes, residential towers. The Ashford name was on every placard. Marcus recognized some of the buildings. He'd helped construct 2 of them back when his hands had been whole and his future had seemed secure. Catherine stopped at a set of double doors at the end of the hall. Miss Ashford asked not to be disturbed. "Take all the time you need." She knocked twice, then opened the door. Victoria's office was enormous, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the river, but Marcus barely noticed the view. He was focused on the woman rising from behind an antique desk, looking far more nervous than a CEO in her own domain had any right to be. "Mr. Reynolds, thank you for coming." Victoria gestured to a sitting area near the windows, 2 leather chairs facing each other across a coffee table. "Please sit down. Can I get you anything? Coffee? Water?" "I want answers," Marcus said bluntly, remaining standing. You said this concerns Emma. Start talking. Victoria's composure cracked slightly. She nodded, moving to one of the chairs and sinking into it as if her legs could no longer support her. You're right. I owe you the truth. Please, at least sit down. This isn't an easy conversation to have. Against his better judgment, Marcus sat, perching on the edge of the chair, every muscle tense. Victoria took a deep breath, and when she spoke, her voice shook slightly. 6 years ago, I was a very different person. I was 21, in my final year at Stanford, and I made choices that... She paused, seeming to gather herself. I got pregnant, Mr. Reynolds, and I gave my baby up for adoption. Marcus felt the world tilt sideways. No, you can't be. Emma is my biological daughter, Victoria said, and tears spilled down her cheeks. I gave birth to her on March 15th, 7 years ago this coming spring. I was alone, terrified, and convinced I couldn't be the mother she deserved. So I made an adoption plan through St. Catherine's agency. She pulled a folder from the table beside her, opening it to reveal documents Marcus recognized, the same adoption papers he and Brittany had signed nearly 7 years ago. A young couple, Marcus and Brittany Reynolds, adopted my baby girl. You adopted my baby girl. The room seemed to spin. Marcus gripped the arms of the chair, his breath coming in short gasps. How did you find me? The adoption was supposed to be closed. We were never supposed to meet. It was closed, Victoria confirmed, and I respected that for 6 years. I got updates through the agency, photos they forwarded, brief letters about milestones. I watched my daughter grow up through snapshots and wondered every single day if I'd made the right choice. Her voice broke. Then, 3 months ago, the agency closed suddenly. Financial mismanagement. And during the chaos of files being transferred to state custody, I hired people to find you. I know it was wrong. I know I had no right. But I needed to see her, just once. I needed to know she was okay. Marcus felt rage building in his chest. You had people investigate me, dig into my life. Yes, Victoria admitted, not looking away. And that's how I learned about your accident, about Brittany leaving. About you raising Emma alone in a 1-bedroom apartment while working overnight shifts at a warehouse because it's the only job you could find that works around your disability. Fresh tears streamed down her face. My daughter's father is struggling to feed her, to keep a roof over her head, and I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. Do you have any idea how that feels? Do you have any idea how it feels to have a stranger show up claiming they're your daughter's mother? Marcus shot back. Emma doesn't know she's adopted. We were waiting until she was older. And now you want to what? Swoop in and play mommy because you've got a guilty conscience and a bank account. No! Victoria stood abruptly, pacing to the windows. That's not... I don't want to take her from you. I can see how much you love her, the way you looked at her last night, the way she looks at you. You're her father in every way that matters. I would never try to change that. Then what do you want? Marcus demanded. Victoria turned to face him, and the raw emotion in her expression made him pause. I want to help you, both of you. I want Emma to have everything she deserves. A stable home, good schools, opportunities. I want you to not have to choose between paying rent and buying her new shoes. I want to take away the financial burden that's crushing you. In exchange for what? Access to Emma. Visitation rights you have no legal claim to. In exchange for nothing, Victoria said quietly. I'm not asking for anything, Mr. Reynolds. I'm offering help. No strings attached. You don't even have to tell Emma who I am. As far as she needs to know, I'm just... someone who wants to help her father. Marcus stood, his head spinning with too many emotions to process. This is insane. You can't just throw money at people and expect... I can't sleep at night, Victoria interrupted, her voice raw. I lie awake knowing that my daughter, the baby I carried for 9 months, the child I held for 3 hours before giving her away, is going without things she needs because I was too young and too scared to be her mother. I gave up my chance to raise her, Marcus. I live with that choice every single day. But I don't have to watch her struggle from a distance. I won't." She moved to her desk and pulled out a checkbook, writing quickly. "This is for you. No strings. Use it for rent, for Emma's future, for medical bills, for whatever you need." She held out the check. Marcus stared at the number. $250,000. "I can't accept this," he said, though his voice lacked conviction. That money would change everything. Emma could have her own room. He could afford the advanced prosthetic Dr. Chen had mentioned. He could stop working 70-hour weeks and actually spend time with his daughter. "Yes, you can," Victoria said gently. "And there's more available whenever you need it. I've set up a trust fund for Emma's education, full ride to any university she chooses, and I'd like to provide a monthly stipend for her general expenses. Again, no strings attached. You never have to see me again if you don't want to." "Why would you do this?" Marcus whispered. "Why not just move on? You gave her up. You could have had a life." "I have a life," Victoria said bitterly. "I run a billion-dollar company. I sit on boards. I attend galas. And every single moment I think about the daughter I'll never get to tuck into bed. This isn't about easing my guilt, Mr. Reynolds. It's about making sure Emma has the life she deserves." She paused. "The life I couldn't give her, but you can, with a little help." Marcus sank back into the chair, the check trembling in his hand. His pride screamed at him to refuse, to walk away, to protect Emma from this complication. But his practical side, the part that had been terrified about how he'd afford Emma's upcoming dental work, whispered that refusing this help would be selfish. "I need time," he said finally. It's too much to process." "Of course," Victoria agreed immediately. "Take all the time you need, but please, at least cash that check. Let me do this one thing." Marcus looked up at her, really looked at her, and saw not a wealthy CEO but a heartbroken mother. "Did you really love her when she was born?" Victoria's face crumpled. "With my whole heart. I still do. Every day I love her. I just loved her enough to give her to people who could give her the stability I couldn't." She wiped her eyes. "I was so relieved when I saw the adoption records. You and Brittany seemed perfect, stable jobs, married, ready to be parents. I thought I'd given her the best chance. And then I went and screwed it all up by getting my arm ripped off and losing everything," Marcus said bitterly. "You didn't screw anything up," Victoria said firmly. "You had an accident. You lost your arm, your job, your wife, and through all of that, you never stopped putting Emma first. Do you know what the investigators' report said about you? That you're at every school event. That you've never missed a bedtime story, even when you're exhausted. That Emma's teacher describes her as one of the happiest, most well-adjusted children in her class, despite everything you've both been through." Her voice softened. "You're an incredible father, Marcus. Emma is lucky to have you." The words broke something in Marcus. He put his head in his hand, and Victoria quietly pushed a box of tissues across the table. "I'm sorry," he managed after a moment. "This is just overwhelming, I know, and I'm sorry for ambushing you like this, but I couldn't keep watching from the shadows, knowing I could help and doing nothing." Victoria sat down across from him again. "I meant what I said. No strings. If you want me to disappear after today, I will. But please let me do this for Emma, for both of you." Marcus looked at the check again. $250,000. Money that could give his daughter the childhood she deserved. Money that would let him stop waking up at night in a panic about bills. Money that came from a woman who had every legal right to disrupt their lives, but was instead offering help with no demands in return. "If I accept this," Marcus said slowly, "Emma can never know. Not yet. She's too young to understand adoption and finding out about you. It would be too much." "I agree completely," Victoria said quickly. "Whatever you think is best. And I mean if we do this, there have to be boundaries, clear boundaries." "Name them." Marcus took a deep breath. "You don't just show up at her school or our apartment. Any contact goes through me first. You don't tell anyone she's your daughter without my permission. And if I ever feel like this arrangement isn't in Emma's best interest, it ends immediately. My decision is final." "Absolutely," Victoria nodded. Your terms, your timeline, always. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the decision hanging between them. Finally, Marcus carefully folded the check and put it in his pocket. "I'll cash this," he said, "and we'll see how things go from there." The relief on Victoria's face was palpable. Thank you for giving me the chance to do this." Marcus stood to leave, then paused. "Last night when you asked me to pretend you were with me, was that really about some guy bothering you?" Victoria had the grace to look embarrassed. "No, I saw you struggling with your meal, and I wanted to help. But I knew a stranger offering assistance would be humiliating, so I made up the excuse. I'm sorry for the deception. And you just happened to be at my sister's wedding. I've been following you for 3 months, Mr. Reynolds. I knew where you'd be." She stood as well. "I know how that sounds. Believe me, I'm aware of how inappropriate this all is. But when I saw Emma in that pink dress, saw how much she'd grown, I couldn't stay away any longer." Marcus should have been angry about the invasion of privacy. Instead, he found himself understanding just a little. "She looked beautiful, didn't she, in her flower girl dress?" "She was perfect," Victoria whispered, "just perfect." At the door, Marcus turned back. "Why didn't you keep her?" "The real reason." Victoria met his eyes, and the pain there was answer enough. "Because I was alone, terrified, and convinced that loving her wasn't enough. That she needed more than a scared 21-year-old could give her. And I was right. She needed you." Marcus left without another word, his head spinning and his pocket heavy with a check that would change everything. In the elevator, he pulled out his phone and saw 3 missed calls from his mother and a text. "Emma wants to know when you'll be home. She misses you." "On my way," he typed back, then stared at his reflection in the elevator's mirrored walls. The man looking back at him held the solution to all his financial problems in his pocket, given by a woman who had every reason to make his life complicated, but was instead offering help with no strings attached. It should have felt like a miracle. Instead, it felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, knowing that one wrong step could send everything crashing down. But for Emma, for his daughter, biological or not, he'd walk that edge. He'd take the help, follow the rules, and pray that Victoria Ashford really meant what she said about having no ulterior motives. Because deep down, in a place he wasn't ready to examine too closely, Marcus knew that people didn't give away $250,000 for nothing. There was always a cost. The only question was when the bill would come due. The check sat on Marcus's kitchen counter for 3 days, untouched. Every time he walked past it, he felt a mix of hope and dread churning in his stomach. Emma had noticed his distraction, asking repeatedly if he was feeling okay, if his arm hurt, if something was wrong. He'd reassured her each time with practiced ease, but the truth gnawed at him constantly. Wednesday evening, after putting Emma to bed with an extra long story about a princess who didn't need rescuing, Marcus finally picked up his phone and called the number on Victoria's business card. She answered on the first ring. "Mr. Reynolds?" "The money," Marcus said without preamble. "If I deposit this check, banks report large deposits. There'll be questions about where it came from. Questions I can't answer without lying or telling the truth, and neither option is good." There was a pause, then Victoria's voice came back, professional and assured. "I'll have my attorney contact you tomorrow. We'll structure it as a personal loan with an extremely favorable interest rate, essentially 0, with forgiveness clauses that make it effectively a gift for tax purposes, but look legitimate to any institution that asks. Everything will be completely legal and documented." "You've thought of everything, haven't you?" "I've had 6 years to think about this, Mr. Reynolds. I just never had the courage to act until now." Her voice softened. "How is Emma?" The question caught Marcus off guard. She's good, happy. She's been asking about the pretty lady from the wedding." He heard Victoria's breath catch. "What did you tell her?" "That you were a friend of Aunt Rachel's. She wanted to know if we'd see you again." Marcus rubbed his temple, exhaustion weighing on him. "I didn't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," Victoria replied quickly. Unless you'd be open to occasional supervised visits." Nothing formal, nothing that would confuse her. Just perhaps crossing paths sometimes. I promise I'd never overstep. Every instinct Marcus had screamed that this was a terrible idea. But he thought about Emma's face when she'd talked about Victoria, the genuine warmth in her voice. His daughter had so few positive female role models since Brittany left, and Victoria had been nothing but respectful of boundaries so far. Maybe, he said carefully, let me think about it. Of course. And Marcus? She'd used his first name without the formal Mr. Reynolds, and somehow it felt right. Thank you for even considering it. And after they hung up, Marcus found himself looking at the framed photo on the bookshelf, Emma as a newborn, tiny and perfect in the hospital blanket. He'd been there for her first breath, her first smile, every milestone. But somewhere in California, a 21-year-old woman had been recovering from childbirth alone, wondering if she'd made the right choice. The next morning, Victoria's attorney called. Gerald Hutchinson was professional, efficient, and had the paperwork ready by noon. Marcus met him at a coffee shop, signed the documents, and by Friday afternoon, his bank account reflected a balance he'd never imagined seeing. After paying off every debt he owed, setting aside money for Emma's immediate needs, and putting a substantial amount in savings, he still had enough left to breathe freely for the first time in 8 months. He picked Emma up from school that Friday afternoon with an actual smile on his face. "Daddy, you look happy," Emma said, buckling into her booster seat. "Did something good happen?" "Something very good, sweetheart. How would you feel about moving to a bigger apartment? One where you could have your own bedroom?" Emma's eyes went wide. "Really? My own room, with my own bed and everything?" "Your own bed, your own closet, space for all your toys. What do you think?" "Yes, yes, yes." Emma bounced in her seat as much as the seatbelt would allow. "Can I paint it pink? Can I have a bookshelf? Can Grandma come see it?" Marcus laughed, the sound genuine and free. "Yes, to all of that. We'll start looking this weekend." They celebrated with pizza that night. The good kind from the Italian place downtown, not the frozen ones they usually ate. As Emma devoured her slice and chattered about bedroom furniture, Marcus felt something he'd almost forgotten: optimism. His phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. "My attorney confirmed everything went through. I'm so glad I could help. Please let me know if you need anything else." Marcus hesitated, then typed back, "Thank you. This means more than you know." Emma's excited about getting her own room. The reply came quickly. "She deserves it. You both do." Over the next 2 weeks, Marcus threw himself into apartment hunting. With Victoria's financial support, he could afford a place in Emma's school district, something with a small yard and a community playground. The apartment he finally chose had 2 bedrooms, a kitchen with actual counter space, and windows that let in natural light, luxuries his previous place had lacked. Emma was ecstatic. She spent hours planning her room, drawing pictures of how she wanted it arranged, picking out bedding from a catalogue with an intensity usually reserved for Christmas wish lists. "Daddy, can we invite people to see our new place when we move in?" Emma asked one evening as they packed boxes. "Sure, baby. Who do you want to invite?" Grandma, Aunt Rachel, my teacher, and maybe the pretty lady? Victoria?" Marcus's hands stilled on the box he was taping. "Why Victoria, sweetheart?" Emma shrugged, focused on wrapping her stuffed animals in newspaper. "I liked her. She was nice to you, and she seemed sad when she looked at me, like maybe she needed a friend." The observation was so astute, so deeply empathetic for a 6-year-old, that Marcus had to turn away to collect himself. His daughter had inherited her biological mother's perceptiveness, it seemed. "I'll think about it," he said finally. That night, after Emma was asleep, Marcus called Victoria again. She answered with the same immediate pickup, and he wondered if she kept her phone nearby constantly, hoping he'd call. "Emma wants to invite you to see our new apartment when we move in," Marcus said without preamble. Victoria's sharp intake of breath was audible. She wants to see me again. Apparently you made an impression. She thinks you looked sad and need a friend." Marcus paused. "Look, I have rules. You come as my friend, Nothing more. You don't bring extravagant gifts. You don't stay too long. And if at any point I think this is confusing or hurting Emma, it stops. Understood. Completely understood, Victoria said, her voice thick with emotion. I'll follow whatever guidelines you set. Just thank you for giving me this chance. Don't make me regret it, Marcus warned, but his tone lacked real harshness. The move happened on a Saturday 3 weeks after Marcus first met Victoria in her office. His mother and sister came to help, along with 2 guys from the warehouse who owed him favors. By early afternoon, all the boxes were in the new place, and Emma was running from room to room in pure joy, unable to decide which space to explore first. "Daddy, it's so big! We have stairs!" The apartment was actually a small townhouse, and the stairs to the second-floor bedrooms were Emma's new favorite feature. Victoria arrived at 3 o'clock, precisely when Marcus had told her to come. She stood at the door holding a small wrapped package, looking nervous in a way that seemed foreign to someone who commanded boardrooms. "Hi," she said when Marcus opened the door. "I know you said no extravagant gifts, so I kept it simple. I hope that's okay." Emma appeared at Marcus's side, her face lighting up. "You came! Do you want to see my room? It's upstairs and it's all mine." "I'd love to see it," Victoria said softly, and Marcus saw her blink rapidly, fighting tears. Emma grabbed Victoria's free hand and pulled her inside, chattering about the move, her new school, the playground nearby. Marcus followed them upstairs, watching carefully as Emma showed Victoria her bedroom, still mostly boxes, but with her bed already assembled and her favorite stuffed bear sitting on the pillow. "This is wonderful, Emma," Victoria said, kneeling down to Emma's level. "You must be so excited." "I am. Daddy said I can pick the paint color. I want pink, but maybe with purple too, or maybe purple with pink. I can't decide." Emma's enthusiasm was infectious, and Victoria laughed. "Those are both beautiful choices. You know what? Maybe you could do one wall in purple and the rest in pink, or paint designs on one wall." Emma's eyes went huge. "You can do that?" "Daddy, can we?" Marcus found himself smiling despite his nerves. "We can talk about it, sweetheart." "Oh, I almost forgot." Victoria held out the wrapped package. "This is for your new room. I hope you like it." Emma tore open the paper with the enthusiasm only a 6-year-old could muster, revealing a beautiful hardcover copy of The Velveteen Rabbit. The cover was illustrated with exquisite detail, clearly an expensive edition, but not so extravagant that it crossed Marcus's boundaries. "It's about a stuffed rabbit who becomes real through being loved," Victoria explained quietly. "It was my favorite book when I was your age. I thought maybe it could be yours too." "Thank you." Emma hugged the book to her chest. "Will you read it to me?" Victoria looked at Marcus, asking permission with her eyes. He nodded slowly, and Victoria settled onto the floor with Emma beside her, the book open between them. Marcus leaned against the doorframe, listening to Victoria read in a gentle, expressive voice that made the story come alive. What struck him most was the way Victoria looked at Emma, with such profound tenderness and barely concealed heartbreak that it made his chest ache. This wasn't a stranger trying to ingratiate herself into their lives. This was a mother watching the daughter she'd given up, treasuring every moment while knowing she had no right to them. When the story ended, Emma demanded to show Victoria the rest of the house. Marcus's mother appeared in the hallway, having come upstairs to see what all the commotion was about. "Ma, this is Victoria. She's a friend," Marcus introduced them. "Victoria, my mother, Susan Reynolds." Susan's eyes were sharp and assessing as she shook Victoria's hand. "Any friend of Marcus's is welcome here," she said, but her tone suggested she was reserving judgment. They all went downstairs, where Rachel and her husband were organizing the kitchen. Emma dragged Victoria from room to room, pointing out features with proprietorial pride. Victoria engaged with everything, asking questions, commenting on details, treating Emma's tour with the seriousness it deserved. "Can you stay for dinner?" Emma asked as the afternoon wore on. "We're getting Chinese food. Daddy said it's a celebration." Victoria looked at Marcus, and he could see the longing in her eyes, warring with respect for his boundaries. "That's up to your dad, sweetheart." Marcus knew he should say no. This was already more access than was wise. But something in him, maybe exhaustion from the move, maybe the genuine happiness on Emma's face, maybe the realization that Victoria had kept every promise she'd made him nod. "You can stay, but just for dinner." The relief on Victoria's face was unmistakable. "Thank you." Dinner was chaotic in the best way. 7 adults and 1 overexcited child crowded around Marcus's new dining table, passing containers of kung pao chicken and lo mein. Emma positioned herself between Marcus and Victoria, chattering non-stop about school, her friends, her plans for her room. Marcus watched Victoria navigate the evening with remarkable skill. She engaged with his family without trying to dominate, complimented Rachel on her wedding, asked Susan about her work as a nurse, all while keeping most of her attention on Emma in a way that seemed natural rather than obsessive. It was his sister who pulled him aside while they were clearing plates. "Who is she, really?" Rachel asked quietly in the kitchen. "And don't tell me she's just a friend. Nobody looks at a child the way she looks at Emma unless there's a deeper connection." Marcus debated lying but realized Rachel would see through it. "She's Emma's biological mother. She found us through the adoption agency records and wants to help financially. That's all." Rachel's eyes went wide. "Marcus, are you insane? You can't just let her into your life like this. What if she wants custody? What if—" "She doesn't want custody," Marcus interrupted firmly. "She just wants to help. And I needed the help, Rach. I needed it desperately." His sister studied his face, then looked through the doorway to where Victoria was showing Emma how to fold a napkin into a swan. "Does Emma know?" "No, and she won't. Not for a long time. This is playing with fire." "I know," Marcus admitted, "but sometimes you need the fire to survive the cold." When dinner ended, Victoria helped clean up despite protests, then prepared to leave. Emma hugged her goodbye with an enthusiasm that made Victoria's composure crack slightly. "Thank you for coming," Emma said. "Will we see you again?" Victoria looked at Marcus, who found himself nodding despite Rachel's warning looks. "I hope so, sweetheart," Victoria said softly, "if your dad says it's okay." After Victoria left, after his family had gone, and Emma was tucked into her new bed in her new room, Marcus sat in his living room and acknowledged a truth he'd been avoiding. Victoria Ashford wasn't going to be a one-time event in their lives. She was becoming a presence, a fixture, someone Emma was beginning to care about, and the terrifying part was that Marcus was starting to trust her. She'd kept every promise, respected every boundary, and shown nothing but genuine care for Emma's well-being. Whatever ulterior motives he'd feared hadn't materialized. His phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. "Thank you for today. It meant more than you could possibly know. Sleep well." Marcus stared at the message for a long moment before typing back, "Emma had a good time. We both did." It was a small admission, but it felt like opening a door he'd been keeping firmly locked. And as Marcus finally headed to bed in his new home, bought with money from the woman who'd given birth to his daughter, he wondered where that open door would ultimately lead them all. Upstairs, Emma slept peacefully with the Velveteen Rabbit on her nightstand and a smile on her face. And somewhere across the city, Victoria Ashford likely lay awake treasuring every moment of the evening, every word Emma had spoken, every smile she'd received from the daughter she'd never stopped loving. The foundation had been laid for something Marcus couldn't quite name yet, not quite friendship, not quite family, but something in between. Something that would either heal old wounds or create devastating new ones. Only time would tell which path they were on. But for tonight, with Emma safe and happy in their new home, Marcus allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, Victoria's unexpected entry into their lives could be something positive. He had no idea how wrong he was about to be proven, because 3 floors above Victoria's penthouse apartment, in a corner office of Ashford Technologies, someone else had been watching Marcus Reynolds and his daughter. Someone who had very different plans for Emma. Someone whose interest in the little girl had nothing to do with motherly love and everything to do with a secret that Victoria herself didn't even know existed. A secret that would shatter everything in exactly 37 days. The next month passed in a rhythm that felt almost too good to be true. Marcus started physical therapy twice a week with a specialist Victoria had recommended and quietly paid for. His new prosthetic arm was being custom-fitted. Technology so advanced, he'd never dreamed of affording it. Emma thrived in their new home. Her room now painted a soft lavender with one accent wall, featuring a mural of a fairy tale castle that Victoria had arranged as a surprise. Victoria visited every other Saturday, always calling ahead, always bringing something small and thoughtful. Art supplies, books, once a simple kite they'd flown together at the park. She never overstepped, never pushed for more time than Marcus offered, and Emma had begun calling her Miss Victoria with genuine affection. It was the first Saturday in November when everything began to unravel. Marcus was making breakfast when his phone rang from an unknown number. "Mr. Reynolds, this is Detective Sarah Chen with the City Police Department. I need to ask you some questions about Victoria Ashford." His blood ran cold. "What about her? Is she okay?" "She's fine, sir. But we're investigating some irregularities at Ashford Technologies. Financial discrepancies. Your name appeared in our preliminary review as a recipient of a substantial sum of money from Ms. Ashford's personal accounts. Can you explain the nature of that transaction?" Marcus's mind raced. The loan documents Gerald Hutchinson had prepared were legitimate, weren't they? It was a personal loan, completely legal. Her attorney handled everything. "I'm sure it was, Mr. Reynolds, but we'd still like to speak with you. Would you be available to come to the station this afternoon? Just routine questions." After he hung up, Marcus immediately called Victoria. She answered on the first ring, her voice tight with stress. "Marcus, I was just about to call you. Have the police contacted you?" "Yes." "What the hell is going on, Victoria?" "It's my uncle, Richard Ashford. He's on the company board, and he's been trying to push me out for years. He's filed a complaint alleging that I've been embezzling company funds for personal use. It's completely false, but he's twisted the narrative to include the money I gave you. He's claiming I used company resources inappropriately." Her voice broke slightly. "I'm so sorry. I never meant to drag you into this. What do I tell the police?" "The truth, that it was my personal money, a gift structured as a loan. Gerald has all the documentation. But Marcus," she hesitated, "they're going to ask why I gave you the money, and if you tell them the truth about Emma, it's going to become public record. Adoption records could be unsealed. Emma could find out in the worst possible way." Marcus felt the walls closing in. "So what do I do? Lie to the police?" "No, never lie. But you could say I'm a friend who wanted to help after your accident. That's true. You don't have to mention the adoption unless directly asked." Victoria paused. "I'll understand if you want to distance yourself from me right now. This is my mess, not yours." "Emma's expecting you this afternoon," Marcus said quietly. "We were going to bake cookies." He heard Victoria's sharp intake of breath. "I can cancel. I don't want to make this harder for you." Marcus looked at Emma, who was setting out cookie sheets with careful concentration, completely unaware that her world might be about to implode. "No, come. Let me deal with the police first, but don't punish Emma because your uncle's a bastard." The police interview that afternoon was tense but professional. Detective Chen asked pointed questions about his relationship with Victoria, the money, what he knew about Ashford Technologies' finances. Marcus stuck to the truth. Victoria was a friend. The money was a personal gift to help him after his accident. He knew nothing about company finances. "It's quite a generous gift from a friend," Detective Chen observed. $250,000, plus ongoing monthly payments. Some might say unusually generous. Some might say that someone who has more money than they could spend in a lifetime sharing it with someone who lost everything isn't unusual at all, Marcus countered. "It's called kindness." Detective Chen studied him for a long moment. "You seem like a good man, Mr. Reynolds. devoted father from what I understand. I'm not trying to make your life difficult, but I need you to understand that if Victoria Ashford is using you as part of some scheme, she's not, Marcus interrupted firmly. Whatever her uncle is accusing her of, she's innocent. I'd stake my life on it. Let's hope you don't have to, the detective said, closing her notebook. When Marcus got home, Victoria's car was already in the driveway. He found her in the kitchen with Emma, both of them covered in flour, laughing as they cut out cookie shapes. The scene was so domestic, so perfectly normal, that it made his chest ache. Victoria looked up when he entered, her smile fading as she read his expression. How did it go? Fine. They're just fishing. He didn't want to discuss it in front of Emma. How are the cookies coming? We made stars and hearts, and Miss Victoria showed me how to make a butterfly. Emma held up a slightly lopsided cookie-cutter creation. Look, Daddy. That's beautiful, baby. Marcus ruffled her hair, but his eyes stayed on Victoria. She looked exhausted, her usual polished appearance slightly frayed around the edges. After the cookies were baked and Emma was occupied with a movie, Victoria and Marcus stepped outside to the small patio. Richard's not going to let this go, Victoria said quietly. He's wanted control of the company since my father died. He thinks I'm too young, too soft. This investigation is his way of forcing me out. What happens if he succeeds? The company goes to him, and the trust fund I set up for Emma. He'd have the authority to contest it. He could tie up that money for years in legal battles. Victoria's hands trembled as she gripped the patio railing. I'm not worried about myself, Marcus. I'm worried about you and Emma. If this gets ugly, if the media gets involved. Emma's adoption could become public, Marcus finished grimly. Yes, and she'd find out in the worst possible way. From strangers, from news reports. Victoria turned to face him, tears in her eyes. I'm so sorry, I thought I was helping you, but I might have just made everything worse. Marcus wanted to be angry. He wanted to blame her for bringing this chaos into their quiet life. But looking at her genuine anguish, her terror at potentially hurting Emma, he couldn't. We'll figure it out. Together. Together? Victoria's voice was barely a whisper. You're not in this alone anymore, Marcus said firmly. Whatever happens, we face it together, for Emma. Victoria's composure finally cracked, and she covered her face with her hands, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Without thinking, Marcus pulled her into a one-armed embrace, and she clung to him like a lifeline. Inside, through the window, Emma watched them with curious 6-year-old eyes, not understanding the adult problems, but sensing something important was happening. She pressed her small hand against the glass, and when Marcus looked up and saw her, he smiled reassuringly, but inside his mind was already racing ahead to worst-case scenarios. If Victoria's uncle succeeded in his attack, if the adoption records were unsealed, if Emma found out the truth before she was ready, everything they'd built could come crashing down, and there was still that nagging question he couldn't shake. Who else was watching Emma? Because someone was. Marcus had felt it for weeks now, a prickling awareness of being observed. He'd caught glimpses of the same dark sedan parked on his street at odd hours. Once, when picking Emma up from school, he'd noticed a man in a suit who seemed far too interested in the children. He dismissed it as paranoia. But now, with Victoria's uncle making aggressive moves, Marcus wondered if there was more to this situation than family corporate drama. Victoria, he said slowly, does your uncle know about Emma, that she's your biological daughter? Victoria pulled back, wiping her eyes. No, no one knows except you, me, and Gerald. I've been incredibly careful. Why? Because someone's been watching us. I thought I was imagining it, but now... Marcus shook his head. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe I'm just on edge because of everything. But the look on Victoria's face told him she didn't think it was nothing. And when her phone buzzed with a text message and she went pale reading it, Marcus knew his instincts had been right. What is it? Victoria showed him the screen. The message was from an unknown number. I know about the girl. We need to talk. You have 48 hours to contact me, or I go to the media with everything. Who sent this? Marcus demanded. I don't know. Victoria's voice shook. But they know about Emma, and they're using her as leverage. The cookies Emma had made with such joy sat cooling on the counter inside. The afternoon that should have been simple and sweet had just turned into something far more dangerous. And somewhere out there, someone who knew their secret was making moves that could destroy everything. Marcus looked at Victoria, then at Emma visible through the window, innocent and unaware. "We have 48 hours, he said grimly. "So we'd better figure out who's threatening us and what they really want." Because one thing was becoming crystal clear. This wasn't just about corporate politics or family drama anymore. Someone had targeted Emma specifically, and Marcus would do whatever it took to protect his daughter, even if it meant facing truths he wasn't ready for and making alliances he never expected. The real battle was just beginning, and the stakes were higher than any of them had imagined. The 48 hours felt like 48 minutes. Victoria hired a private investigator named Frank Morrison, a former FBI agent who specialized in corporate espionage and blackmail cases. Marcus insisted on being part of every meeting, every decision. If someone was threatening Emma, he had a right to know everything. They met in Victoria's office on Monday evening, after Emma was safely at Marcus's mother's house. Frank spread photos across the conference table, surveillance images of Marcus and Emma at the park, at school, at their home. Someone had been watching them for months, long before Victoria had even approached Marcus at the wedding. "This isn't about the corporate investigation," Frank said bluntly. "This is something else entirely. Someone's been tracking your daughter specifically, Mr. Reynolds. The question is why." "Could it be Richard Ashford?" Victoria asked. "My uncle trying to find leverage against me?" Frank shook his head. "Richard's methods are aggressive but legal. Filing complaints, board manipulation, media leaks. This surveillance operation cost serious money and required sophisticated planning. It's not his style." He pulled out another photo, this one showing a man in his 50s watching Emma's school from across the street. "We've identified this individual. His name is Dr. James Wellington." Victoria went completely still. "That's impossible." "You know him?" Marcus asked sharply. "He was my mother's physician. He died 3 years ago. I went to his funeral." Victoria's voice was barely audible. "That can't be him." "It's him," Frank confirmed. "Faked his death, new identity, the whole 9 yards. But fingerprint analysis confirms it. And here's where it gets interesting." He pulled out a medical file. "Dr. Wellington was also your mother's fertility specialist, Ms. Ashford. He treated her for years before she got pregnant with you." "What does my mother's fertility treatment have to do with Emma?" Victoria demanded. Frank exchanged a glance with Marcus, then continued carefully. "We pulled Dr. Wellington's research history. For the past 15 years, he's been obsessed with genetic inheritance patterns, specifically regarding intelligence and exceptional abilities in children. He published several controversial papers before his medical license was suspended for ethical violations." Marcus felt ice forming in his stomach. "What kind of ethical violations?" "Unauthorized genetic testing on patients, manipulation of fertility treatments without consent. He believed he could create superior children through selective genetic enhancement." Frank paused. "Ms. Ashford, did your mother ever mention anything unusual about her pregnancy with you? Any special treatments or procedures?" Victoria's face had gone chalk white. "No. She just said it took years to conceive, but she never gave details. She died when I was 19, and my father never wanted to talk about it." "We need to consider the possibility," Frank said slowly, "that Dr. Wellington did something to your mother's fertility treatment, something experimental, and that he's been tracking the results ever since." "You're saying he experimented on my mother?" Victoria's voice rose. "That I'm some kind of, what, science project?" "I'm saying it's a possibility we can't ignore, especially given his current interest in Emma." Frank pulled out another document. "Emma's adoption records from St. Catherine's Agency. We did some digging. Dr. Wellington made substantial anonymous donations to that agency for years. He had access to their files, their records, everything." Marcus stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "You're telling me this lunatic has been tracking my daughter since birth because of some experiment he might have done on Victoria's mother 30 years ago?" "That's exactly what I'm telling you," Frank said grimly. "And it gets worse. We trace the blackmail message Victoria received. It came from Dr. Wellington. He wants a meeting. He says he has information about Emma that you both need to hear." "Absolutely not," Marcus said immediately. "We're not meeting with some deranged doctor who's been stalking my daughter." "We might not have a choice," Victoria said quietly. She looked devastated, her usual confidence completely shattered. "If he goes to the media, if he reveals everything, Marcus, think about what he could say, that Emma's adoption was somehow orchestrated, that there's something genetically unusual about her. The media would tear her apart. So we let him blackmail us?" "We hear what he has to say," Frank interjected. "In a controlled environment, recorded, with security present. We get whatever information he has, and then we go to the authorities with evidence of his stalking, his blackmail, his fraud. We flip this situation back on him." Marcus looked at Victoria, saw the fear and guilt warring in her expression. She blamed herself for all of this, for giving Emma up, for finding Marcus, for every choice that had led them to this moment. "If we do this," Marcus said slowly, "Emma never knows. Whatever this psycho says, whatever he thinks he knows, Emma is protected. That's non-negotiable." "Agreed," Victoria said immediately. "Whatever it takes." The meeting was arranged for Wednesday evening at a secure facility Frank's company owned, a nondescript office building with security cameras and armed guards positioned discreetly nearby. Marcus left Emma with his mother again, hating the lie he told about a work emergency, hating the fear that gnawed at him constantly now. Dr. James Wellington looked exactly like his photos. Distinguished, professorial, with kind eyes that Marcus immediately distrusted. He sat across the conference table from them, a leather portfolio in front of him, looking utterly calm. "Thank you for coming," he said pleasantly, as if this were a normal business meeting. "I know my methods of contact were dramatic, but I needed to ensure I had your attention." "You've been stalking my daughter," Marcus said coldly. "You're lucky I agreed to this meeting instead of going straight to the police." "Your daughter," Dr. Wellington repeated with a slight smile. "Yes, let's talk about Emma. Or more specifically, let's talk about what Emma represents." He opened the portfolio and pulled out genetic test results, research papers, photographs spanning decades. 28 years ago, I was approached by Margaret Ashford, Victoria's mother, desperate for a child after years of failed fertility treatments. I was conducting revolutionary research at the time into genetic optimization. Margaret agreed to participate in my program. "You experimented on my mother," Victoria said, her voice shaking with rage. "I gave your mother a child when no one else could," Dr. Wellington corrected. "I used cutting-edge genetic selection and enhancement techniques. And the result was you, Victoria. Exceptional intelligence, robust health, strong emotional resilience. You were my greatest success. I'm not your success. I'm a person." "Of course you are. A remarkable person." Dr. Wellington turned to Marcus. "When I learned that Victoria had become pregnant at 21 and given the child up for adoption, I was devastated. Another generation of my work, lost to the system. I'd planned to approach Victoria when she was older, to explain what she carried in her genes. But then she gave Emma away." "So you tracked Emma down," Marcus said, disgust evident in his voice. "You stalked a child." "I monitored her development," Dr. Wellington said calmly. "And what I've observed is extraordinary. Emma shows signs of exceptional cognitive abilities far beyond what random genetics would produce. She's inherited the enhancements I built into Victoria's genetic line. She represents the future of human potential. She represents my daughter, and you need to stay the hell away from her," Marcus growled. Dr. Wellington's expression hardened. "I don't think you understand the situation, Mr. Reynolds. Emma isn't just a normal child. She carries genetic modifications that make her unique, valuable. There are research institutions, pharmaceutical companies, government agencies that would pay millions for access to her genetic material, for the chance to study what I've created. The threat hung in the air like poison. Victoria stood abruptly. "You're insane. You're talking about a 6-year-old girl like she's a commodity. I'm talking about scientific advancement, and I'm offering you a choice." Dr. Wellington pulled out a contract. "Sign over custodial rights to me. Allow me to provide for Emma's education and development in a controlled environment. In exchange, I'll ensure her genetic legacy remains secret. No media exposure, no public scrutiny. She'll have the best of everything. You want us to give you our daughter, so you can run experiments on her," Marcus said, his voice dangerously quiet. "That's what you're actually saying. I'm offering her the chance to reach her full potential. And I'm offering you protection from the media storm that will erupt if I go public with my research. People will want to know about Emma. They'll want to study her, test her, exploit her. I can prevent that, but only if you cooperate." Marcus lunged across the table, only Frank's quick intervention stopping him from reaching Wellington's throat. "You touch my daughter, you even look at her wrong, and I will end you. Do you understand me?" Dr. Wellington gathered his papers calmly. "You have 72 hours to consider my offer. After that, I contact the media with everything. The genetic modification, the adoption manipulation, all of it. Emma will become the most famous child in America, and you'll have no way to protect her from what comes next." He stood. "I'll be in touch." After he left, the room fell into stunned silence. Victoria was crying openly, and Marcus felt like he might actually be sick. "We go to the police," Marcus said finally. "Right now. We tell them everything." "With what evidence?" Frank said grimly. "Everything he just said. We recorded it, but he was careful. He never explicitly threatened Emma. He made an offer, creepy as hell, but technically legal. And if we go public with this recording, we're the ones exposing Emma's story to the world." "So what do we do?" Victoria asked desperately. "We can't just give her to him, we can't." Marcus's phone rang. His mother. He answered, his hand trembling. "Ma?" "Marcus, you need to come home right now. Someone tried to take Emma from the playground. She's safe. The police are here. But she's asking for you and she's terrified." The world dropped out from under Marcus's feet. "I'm on my way." He was running for the door before he even hung up, Victoria right behind him. Dr. Wellington hadn't been making idle threats. He'd already made his move. And now Emma, sweet, innocent Emma, who knew nothing about genetic modifications or mad doctors, was caught in the middle of a nightmare she couldn't possibly understand. The real war had just begun, and Marcus would burn the entire world down before he let anyone take his daughter. The police station was chaos. Marcus burst through the doors with Victoria close behind to find his mother holding Emma, who was crying hysterically. The moment Emma saw him, she broke free and ran into his arms. "Daddy, there was a man, and he said he was a friend, and he tried to make me go with him, but Grandma yelled and people came and—" The words tumbled out between sobs. "Shh, baby, I've got you. You're safe now. You're safe." Marcus held her tight with his good arm, his heart hammering so hard he thought it might burst. Over Emma's head, he met his mother's eyes. Susan Reynolds looked murderous. "The man approached her on the playground," Susan explained, her voice shaking with barely controlled rage. "Said you'd sent him to pick her up. Emma's smart enough to know better, started screaming for me. By the time I got there, he was gone. Security cameras caught him, but he knew exactly where they were. Stayed out of clear view." Detective Chen appeared, her expression grim. "Mr. Reynolds, I need you to tell me everything, and I mean everything. This is the second time your name has come up in my investigations this week, and now someone's attempted to abduct your daughter. I'm done with partial truths." Marcus looked at Victoria, who nodded. They were out of options. In a private interview room, with Emma safely distracted by a kind officer with coloring books, Marcus and Victoria laid out the entire story: the adoption, Victoria's genetic modification, Dr. Wellington's blackmail, and his attempted abduction of Emma. They held nothing back. Detective Chen listened with an expression that progressed from skeptical to horrified. When they finished, she sat back heavily in her chair. "This is the most insane case I've ever heard, and I've been doing this for 15 years. She pulled out her phone. "I'm calling the FBI. This crosses state lines, involves genetic manipulation, child endangerment, fraud. This is way above local jurisdiction. But I can tell you right now, that recording you have of Wellington, that's going to be crucial evidence." "What about Emma?" Marcus demanded. "How do we keep her safe?" "Protective custody. We can put you both in a safe house until Wellington is apprehended." Detective Chen's expression softened. "Mr. Reynolds, I know this is terrifying, but Emma's safety is my top priority too. We're going to catch this guy." The next 72 hours were a blur. Marcus, Emma, and Victoria were moved to a safe house in an undisclosed location. FBI agents swarmed Dr. Wellington's known addresses, but he'd vanished. His apartment was abandoned, his office cleaned out. He'd anticipated their move and gone underground. Emma didn't understand why they couldn't go home, why there were always serious people with guns standing outside. She clung to Marcus constantly, having nightmares about the man from the playground, and she'd grown attached to Victoria's presence, asking repeatedly why Miss Victoria was staying with them. On the third night, as Emma finally slept fitfully in the safe house's small bedroom, Marcus and Victoria sat in the kitchen, exhausted and terrified. "This is my fault," Victoria said quietly. "All of it. If I'd never looked for you, if I'd just stayed away." "Emma would still carry Wellington's genetic modifications," Marcus interrupted. "He would have found her eventually. At least now we know what we're dealing with." "Do we? Because I don't even know what I am anymore. Am I even really Victoria Ashford, or am I just some mad scientist's experiment that happened to grow up?" Marcus reached across the table and took her hand, an instinctive gesture that surprised them both. "You're Emma's mother. You're the woman who gave up everything to make sure she had a good life. You're the person who came back to help when you didn't have to. That's who you are." Victoria's eyes filled with tears. "I don't deserve her. I don't deserve either of you." "Maybe not, but you've got us anyway." They sat in silence, hands clasped, two broken people trying to protect the child they both loved. And Marcus realized with stunning clarity that somewhere in the chaos of the past months, Victoria had become more than just Emma's biological mother. She'd become family. The breakthrough came on day 5. The FBI traced Dr. Wellington to a private research facility in Montana. When agents raided it, they found laboratories full of genetic research, files on dozens of children born through Wellington's program over 3 decades, and evidence of ongoing illegal experiments. Dr. Wellington was arrested attempting to flee to Canada. In custody, he finally broke, revealing the full scope of his operation. Victoria wasn't his only success story. There were 17 others, children now grown, scattered across the country. Some knew about their origins, most didn't, and Emma represented the next generation, proof that his enhancements could be passed down. The media frenzy was everything they'd feared. Mad Doctor's genetic experiments dominated headlines. Victoria's face was plastered across every news outlet, and inevitably, despite the FBI's best efforts to protect Emma's identity, details about the 6-year-old second-generation subject leaked. Marcus made the hardest decision of his life. He sat Emma down in the safe house and told her the truth, all of it, that she'd been adopted, that Victoria was her birth mother, that a bad man had done something to make Victoria special, and that Emma might be special too, but that didn't change anything about who she was or how much she was loved. Emma processed it with the remarkable resilience of childhood. "So Miss Victoria is my real mommy, like how I grew in her tummy?" "Yes, baby." "And you're my real daddy because you love me and take care of me?" "Exactly right." Emma thought about this seriously. "Can I have 2 mommies and 1 daddy? Some kids at school have 2 daddies." Marcus's throat tightened. "You can have whatever family you want, sweetheart." Emma turned to Victoria, who was crying silently. "Are you sad, Miss Victoria? I mean, Mommy." The word mommy broke Victoria completely. She knelt down to Emma's level, tears streaming down her face. "I'm sad because I wasn't there when you were little. I'm sad because I missed so much, but I'm so happy that I get to know you now, if you'll let me." Emma considered this with 6-year-old wisdom, then wrapped her arms around Victoria's neck. "It's okay. Daddy says sometimes people make mistakes because they're scared, but if they say sorry and try to be better, that's what matters." "Did you say sorry?" "I'm so sorry, Emma, for everything. Then you can be my mommy, but Daddy's still my favorite because he reads me stories every night." Marcus laughed through his own tears. "I can live with that." The legal aftermath took months. Dr. Wellington went to trial, was convicted on multiple counts of fraud, genetic manipulation without consent, and attempted kidnapping. He died in prison 3 years later, his legacy one of violated ethics and destroyed lives. Victoria's Uncle Richard quietly withdrew his corporate complaints when the full story came out. Apparently, even he had limits on what he'd exploit for business advantage. Victoria remained CEO of Ashford Technologies and became a fierce advocate for genetic research ethics and adopted children's rights. Marcus used Victoria's resources to finish his education, eventually becoming a counselor for other parents of adopted children. His prosthetic arm became more natural over time, and he learned that losing a limb didn't make him less of a father. It just changed how he hugged. And Emma? Emma grew up knowing she was loved by not one, but 2 parents who'd fought hell itself to keep her safe. She did show exceptional intelligence as she got older, but whether that was Wellington's genetic tinkering or just who she was naturally, nobody cared to determine. She was simply Emma, remarkable in her own right. 5 years after that terrifying night in the safe house, Marcus stood in Victoria's backyard, watching Emma play with the golden retriever puppy Victoria had insisted she needed. Susan Reynolds was setting the table for Sunday dinner, and Rachel was arguing with her husband about proper barbecue technique. It was loud and chaotic and absolutely perfect. Victoria came to stand beside Marcus, sliding her hand into his. They'd been married for 2 years now, a development neither of them had seen coming but both recognized as inevitable. Family had a way of finding its shape, regardless of how it started. "You know what's funny?" Marcus said softly. "That night at Rachel's wedding when you asked me to pretend we were together, I thought you were crazy. Some rich woman using me for who knows what reason. And now I can't imagine our lives any other way." He pulled her close. "Though I still think you're a little crazy. Just a little. Maybe a lot crazy. But you're our crazy." Emma ran up to them, puppy in her arms, cheeks flushed with happiness. "Daddy, Mommy, can we get another dog? This one needs a friend." Marcus and Victoria exchanged glances, then laughed. "We'll think about it," they said in unison. As the sun set over their found family, Marcus reflected on how far they'd come. From a one-armed man struggling to eat at a wedding to a father with a family that chose each other every single day. Victoria had given Emma life twice, once at birth, once by coming back when it mattered most. And Emma, she'd given them both the greatest gift of all, a reason to become the people they were meant to be. The stranger's promise at a wedding had become so much more. It had become love, family, and home, and that was the greatest miracle of all.